No one believed in him. Not when he was a boy with a dream. Not when he stood at the edge of failure, staring into the eyes of those who laughed, doubted, and dismissed him. Not when he gave everything he had, only to be told it wasn't enough. He was the kind of person others walked past, not because he was invisible, but because to them he simply didn't matter. They saw his weaknesses. They pointed out his flaws. They highlighted everything he wasn't, and never once did they acknowledge what he could become. At first he listened. He heard every word. He soaked up the judgment like a sponge. And for a while, he started to believe them. Maybe they were right. Maybe he wasn't meant for greatness. Maybe the fire inside him was just a flicker that would die out with time. But something deep in him refused to let go. It wasn't arrogance, it wasn't pride, it was survival. When you've been left alone in the dark for so long, you start to build your own light. Not to impress anyone. Not to prove them wrong. But simply because your soul can't stand the silence anymore. He wasn't born confident. He wasn't raised on encouragement. There were no mentors, no applause, no guiding hand on his shoulder. There was just the pain, the kind that burns slowly, the kind that doesn't scream but whispers, "You are not enough." And yet, he kept going. While others slept, he worked. While others laughed at him, he studied. While others found comfort in the crowd, he found strength in solitude. Because somewhere along the way he realized that if no one was going to believe in him, then he had only one option left. He had to believe in himself. And that belief, it wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was quiet, steady, unshakable. It was built through long nights and silent battles. It was forged in the fire of isolation. Every rejection was fuel. Every doubt was a brick. And every tear was mortar in the foundation of a future no one saw coming. He didn't beg for validation. He didn't scream for attention. He just worked. In silence, in pain, in darkness. Because he understood something most people never will. Your value doesn't come from what they think of you. It comes from what you know you can survive. And he had survived enough to know that he was built for more. He stopped asking for permission. He stopped waiting for someone to say, "You've got potential." Because potential is meaningless if you're not willing to dig it out of yourself. And so every day he showed up. Tired, broken, overlooked. But still, he showed up. He started stacking small wins. Not for show, not for praise, but for his soul. Every early morning, every rep at the gym, every book he read, every failure he studied. These were the bricks in the house he was building. Quietly, relentlessly, and while they kept laughing, he kept building. There's something terrifying about a man who doesn't need the crowd, a man who doesn't fold under pressure, a man who's been betrayed, abandoned, and doubted, but still walks forward. That kind of man becomes dangerous, not to the world, but to the limits the world tries to place on him. They thought he was weak, but he had learned that true strength isn't loud. It doesn't need to prove itself, it just is. They thought he'd break, but they didn't know he'd already been broken and put himself back together, stronger, sharper, smarter. He became a warrior of his own making. Not because he wanted the glory, but because he couldn't afford to stay small anymore. The life he wanted wasn't going to fall into his lap. The respect he craved wasn't going to be handed to him. He had to earn it. Every inch, every second, every sacrifice. And when the world still didn't clap, when the people still didn't notice, he didn't stop. Because the applause wasn't the point anymore. The mission was. He learned that silence is sacred, that isolation is a forge, that belief isn't something you borrow, it's something you build. And now when they look at him, they don't see the boy they once ignored. They see a man who rose without help, who built himself without guidance, who kept going when no one was watching. They see the product, but they'll never understand the process. They see the confidence, but they'll never feel the fear he had to walk through to earn it. They see the strength, but they'll never know the nights he cried into his pillow, the mornings he woke up with doubt gripping his chest like a vice, the loneliness that nearly broke him in half. But he knows. He remembers, and he wouldn't erase a second of it because it was in that darkness that he found his fire. It was in the silence that he heard his own voice for the first time. And it was in the rejection that he realized he didn't need them to believe in him. He just needed to believe in himself. Now he walks with purpose, not because he's better than anyone, but because he finally understands who he is. He doesn't chase people. He doesn't seek approval. He doesn't beg for chances. He creates them. He doesn't fear failure because failure raised him. It taught him discipline. It gave him clarity. It stripped away the illusions and forced him to face the one thing no one else could fix: himself. And he did. He rebuilt himself, piece by piece. And now, he's unrecognizable. To those who doubted him, he's the reminder that your words were never stronger than his will. To those who left him behind, he's the proof that being alone doesn't mean being lost. And to anyone out there who feels like no one believes in them, he's the voice that says, you don't need them to, because the day you stop begging the world to see you is the day you become dangerous, not because you're angry, but because you're free. Free to move, free to grow, free to build without limits. He started with nothing but pain, but now he carries power, not the kind that comes from money, fame, or followers, the kind that comes from knowing who the hell you are. And the truth is, no one has to believe in you. They don't have to clap. They don't have to see you. They don't have to support you. Because you're enough. You are the storm. You are the fire. You are the one they never saw coming. And that is your greatest power. Because when no one believes in you and you still rise, you don't just succeed, you become unstoppable.